You probably have something sitting in your home right now that you bought with full intention of using. Maybe it's a book you were excited to read, a piece of exercise equipment, a course you paid for, a kitchen gadget that promised to change how you cook, and you haven't touched it in weeks, maybe months. This isn't about laziness. It's not even about poor planning. What's happening is something far more specific, and it's been quietly shaping your buying behavior for years without you realizing it. Most people assume they buy things they don't use because they're impulsive or undisciplined. They think the solution is just to be more careful next time. But that explanation misses what's actually happening in the moment you decide to buy something, because the version of you that makes the purchase is not the same version that has to use it. When you're standing in a store or scrolling through a website, you're not really buying the object itself. You're buying the person you imagine you'll become once you own it. The book isn't just a book, it's the version of you who reads every night before bed. The yoga mat isn't just a mat, it's the calmer, more centered version of you who actually does yoga in the mornings. And in that moment, that future version feels completely real. Research on something called the projection bias shows that we consistently overestimate how much our future self will behave like our current self in this exact moment. When you're feeling motivated to change, you assume that motivation will carry forward. When you're excited about a new habit, you believe that excitement will still be there next Tuesday at 6 in the morning. But it won't be, because motivation isn't a personality trait. It's a temporary state. The problem is that the gap between who you are when you buy something and who you are when you're supposed to use it is often enormous. You buy running shoes on a Sunday afternoon when you're feeling energized and optimistic, but you're supposed to use them on a Wednesday morning when you're tired and behind on emails and it's raining outside. Those are two completely different emotional contexts, and the person making the purchase has no access to what the second moment will actually feel like. This is why you can buy a blender with absolute certainty that you'll make smoothies every morning, and then 3 weeks later it's still in the box. It's not that you lied to yourself. It's that the version of you who bought it existed in a completely different psychological state than the version of you staring at it unopened on your counter. And companies know this. They don't just sell you products, they sell you identity shifts. The marketing isn't about features, it's about showing you a version of yourself that feels aspirational and achievable at the same time. You see someone using the product in a way that looks effortless, and your brain doesn't register that as advertising. It registers it as permission to believe you could be that person. So you buy it. And in that moment, you're not wrong. You genuinely do want to be that person. The intent is real. The problem is that intent doesn't survive contact with your actual daily life. There's another layer to this. When you buy something, you also buy time. Not in a literal sense, but psychologically. The act of purchasing feels like progress. It feels like you've already started the thing you wanted to start. You buy the book, and part of your brain registers that as having done something about your goal to read more. This is called goal substitution. The preparatory action replaces the actual action. And because buying something feels productive, it creates a tiny sense of completion that actually reduces the urgency to follow through. You can see this everywhere. The gym membership that makes you feel healthier the day you sign up, even though you haven't worked out yet. The language app you download with excitement, which somehow makes you feel like you've already taken a step toward fluency. The notebook you buy to finally get organized, which sits empty because buying it felt like organizing. The purchase gives you a hit of accomplishment without requiring any of the sustained effort the actual activity demands. And then there's the issue of how we imagine effort. When you're deciding whether to buy something, you imagine using it in ideal conditions. You picture yourself cooking with that new pan when you have time and energy and fresh ingredients. But in reality, you'll be expected to use it on a random Thursday after a long day when you're trying to figure out what to do with leftovers. The gap between imagined use and actual use is where most purchased items go to die. This doesn't mean you're bad at predicting your own behavior. It means you're human. Every person operates with this same bias. The issue is that our brains are wired to prioritize how we feel right now over how we'll feel later, even when we're explicitly trying to plan for later. And the feeling right now when you're about to buy something is hope. Hope is an incredibly powerful purchase motivator. It doesn't feel like impulsivity. It feels like optimism, like you're investing in a better version of your life. But hope doesn't load the dishwasher. It doesn't wake you up early. It doesn't make you open the book on page 1 when you're tired. Hope gets you to the checkout page. It doesn't get you to consistent use. There's one more thing worth naming here. Every object you buy with the intention of using it comes with an invisible burden. It comes with the expectation that you'll become the kind of person who uses it. And when you don't, it becomes a small, quiet reminder of a gap between who you thought you'd be and who you actually are. That's why unused items don't just take up space. They take up mental energy. Every time you see them, there's a tiny moment of reckoning, a flash of guilt or disappointment or frustration, not because the item itself matters, but because it represents an unkept promise you made to yourself. And the strange thing is, you'll often keep these items far longer than makes sense. You won't throw them out or donate them because doing so would mean admitting the purchase was a mistake, so they stay, tucked in closets, sitting on shelves, quietly accumulating. Now, this doesn't mean every purchase you make with good intentions is doomed. Some things do get used. Some future versions of yourself do show up. But the ones that don't aren't failures of willpower. They're mismatches between the emotional state that prompted the purchase and the actual circumstances required to use it. Understanding this doesn't fix it, but it does take away the shame, because the problem isn't that you're undisciplined or wasteful. The problem is that you're being asked to predict the behavior of a future self who will exist in conditions you can't fully imagine while you're in a completely different state of mind. That's not a character flaw. It's just how decision-making works when it's separated from action by time. So the next time you're about to buy something with the intent to use it, you don't need to stop yourself. But you might notice the feeling, the quiet certainty that this time will be different. The belief that the motivated version of you making the purchase is the same version who'll be around next week. And you might notice that the object you're buying isn't just an object, it's a small bet you're making on who you'll be tomorrow. Most of the time, tomorrow shows up as someone else.